To start off, what inspired you to pursue psychology academically, and how did you find a specific interest in decision-making theories?
Okay, so I started out as a musician. I played jazz, Dixieland, soul, and had to make a decision when I did my PhD work. Was I want to stay on the stage or try an academic career? For me, that meant a choice between music, which was the safe option. I earned much more money than as an assistant professor, or going the risky option. So I took the risky option. And that's also because I couldn't know whether I will ever make it to a professorship. So that's the short history. And since then, I became interested in decision making. How do you make such a decision? And I did not sit down and write all reasons for and against and weigh them and do a calculation. And these are decision makings under uncertainty, where it's typical that after some thinking about that, you feel you just go with the most important thing. And for me, it was to take some risks in your life, to take on challenges and try something new. So that's my own entry into decision making.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can all relate right now with AI becoming a growing field, and we all kind of want to adapt our careers to reflect that. To move on to Simply Rational, the Decision Institute that you founded, what motivated you to found this institution, and how did the institute aim to bridge the gap between AI, decision-making, and behavioral science?
The Simply Rational is a spin-off and of the Max Planck Society, and it tries to put in action many of the things I'm thinking about, including helping, at the moment, for instance, to make complicated scoring systems simpler. For instance, credit scoring. Most of you have a credit score, but few of you will know how it has been done. And it's a secrecy typically. And so we work with one of the largest credit scorer worldwide. And the situation is something like this. They use hundreds of variables, and they are interconnected in a way so that even the people at the credit scorer cannot know how the credit score at the end results. And since this is a situation of uncertainty, often much simpler methods do as well, but they are actually transparent, and you can explain them. For instance, if you have more than 2 credit cards, it's usually said your score goes down, but only most of the time, because everything is interconnected with everything else. It can also go in the other direction. And one principle that's important for me is to try to help people to understand what's being done to them, such as with credit scoring. And here you need to make it simple. And that can be done without loss of accuracy, but transparent. And if you succeed, that will be the first credit scorer worldwide who goes for transparency and understandability, which I think is a basic right of every human being in a world of AI, and it should be held over the interests of the companies.
I agree. Especially in America, we have a severe lack of credit score transparency. Now, to move into some of your specific concepts that you talk about a lot, in your work, you often discuss the concept of bounded rationality. Could you explain this concept in simple terms and how it became a focal point in your studies?
Yeah. Bounded rationality is the study of how people make decisions in a world that is uncertain. While traditional rationality, as defined by expected utility maximization or Bayesian probability updating, assumes a world that is stable and well-defined. And here it works well. But most of the problems that we face are ill-defined. For instance, how to find the best partner for your life, whom to hire, where to invest, and what to do with the rest of your life. These are all problems where calculating the optimal solution is out of reach. So bounded rationality is a study how people make decisions in these kind of situations. And it's typically done with heuristics. That means simple rules that are robust and adaptive, and also with the help of rules, both legal rules or even traffic rules. And that ensemble is what my interest is in.
Sorry, you cut out a little bit for a second at the end, but that was really interesting. And to move into heuristics, one of your key contributions to psychology is the study of heuristics. Do you think you could explain what they are and then give, and how they simplify decision-making processes?
Yeah. So I distinguish social heuristics from individual heuristics. A social heuristic would be imitate the majority or imitate the best. And that is something that most of us rely on in many situations. And it is also the driver of human culture. Without imitation and teaching, there would be no culture. Every one of us would have to start from scratch. Imitation is often looked down, but it's not only culture, but what do big tech companies do? They imitate, they copy from others. Most of what Facebook has achieved has been copied from others. And that's one type of heuristic. And other heuristics try to find what's the most important reason and go with that and ignore all the rest. And we study what are the conditions where such a heuristic works and where would it fail. And that's different from the typical theory in, say, behavioral economics, which always takes heuristics as only second best and thinks that logic always can give the best answer. That's a big illusion. It's only, so logical rationality is a great achievement of humankind, but it works in well-defined and stable situations. And similar for AI applications. The best successes in AI are in well-defined, stable situations, starting with chess and Go. And where AI has problems is with uncertainty. So, for instance, predicting human behavior. Recidivism algorithms like Compass are sold and used, but they really don't work well. It's mainly marketing hype or technological faith. And here is an important distinction. So similar as in decision theory, one distinguishes between situations of risk where everything is known and can be foreseen, including the probabilities, and those of uncertainty, to understand what AI, meaning here deep neural artificial networks, can do is to distinguish between situations that are fairly well defined and stable versus other situations which are not. And that's an important insight to prevent yourself from either being totally skeptical about AI or totally enthusiastic. Both is wrong. The question is, where can we expect that a certain type of AI, say deep neural networks, will work and where not? That's the real question.
Yeah, we definitely make a point of discussing that in our AI meetings as well. To move on to your book that you wrote, Gut Feelings, The Intelligence of the Unconscious, and it explores intuitive decision-making. How do you differentiate between intuition and analytical thinking in decision-making?
Yeah. So intuition is often opposed to deliberate thinking. That's a big error. The typical situation is that you need both, and they go hand in hand. So, an example. Let me first define what I mean with intuition. Intuition is a feeling that's based on years of experience. Second, that is quickly comes to your mind. And third, you can't explain why you feel this way. So it is not an arbitrary judgment of some inept politician. It's not a sixth sense or something that God gave us. And it's also not something that only women have. Everyone has intuition. And the question is, you need really have experience about an issue. And here's an example. If a doctor sees a patient and feels today is something wrong with the patient, but cannot explain it immediately, that's an intuition. A novice will probably see nothing, but the doctor sees something. And then the next step is to use diagnostics and analytics to find out what's wrong. That's an example how intuition and experience goes together. And it's not an opposition. In the real world, you don't get far without intuition. There would be little innovation. And also, you don't get far with only intuition. A study with 17 Nobel laureates asked them, how can you explain your success, your breakthroughs? And almost all of them said, it's a mixture of going back and forth from data to intuition to data to intuition, and so on. If you ask the best chess players, like Judith Polya or Magnus Persson, how they play, they will tell you it's based on intuition. But not only. You need first study chess. You need study books. And only with experience, you will have intuition. So we need to take intuition as seriously as as we do deliberate thinking. And we can answer the question, when should we trust our intuition? And the most important answer is, do I have experience with this topic? When not, don't trust your intuition.
Yeah, you mentioned in healthcare as well as in chess playing, human expertise can still outperform AI. Are there any other bigger fields that you can think of as well?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, what are some of the main fields where human expertise might still outperform AI?
Oh, yeah. These are typical situations of uncertainty. So how to judge the intentions of another person? Very difficult for AI. As I mentioned before, the prediction of human behavior is very difficult, and it's typically that the best and most complex AI algorithms, which are typically at the moment deep neural networks, do not better than a simple rule or heuristic that just looks at 2 or 3 important factors. Recidivism prediction is an example for that. And another topic where AI has, where we still haven't got very far with AI, is robotics. So you can do robotics very well if you have a well-defined situation, like in an industry, and here it's great. But I'm still waiting for a household robot who would do the chores and get out the trash.
Mm-hmm.
We are far away from that.
Yeah, and although in some cases human expertise can outperform AI, are there any ways that you would recommend AI can be designed to complement human decision making, especially in uncertain situations?
Yeah. I mean, the future will be a cooperation between humans and AI. That's no question. The future is not a general AI that can do everything we can do, only better. That is total science fiction. And the examples that I gave are some of those. And in order to have a fruitful collaboration, for instance, in medicine, one needs to understand what AI can do and what it cannot do. And if you think back about, remember IBM's Watson, who was about 10 years ago, featured as the particular Watson oncology was featured as the solution for therapy. And meanwhile, it has been sold in pieces because that's too difficult for it. AI can help for certain issues in healthcare, particular, for instance, for keeping tracks, keeping records, but it cannot do everything an experienced doctor can do. And the danger is, if we rely on AI in situation where it's not good, then we may lose because we are no longer training our students, for instance, medical students, to look and to see what an experienced doctor can see. So the general message of the book, How to Stay Smart in a Smart World, is that because there's a fast development in AI, and AI gets smarter and smarter, we need to get smarter too, and not lean back.
Yeah, I mean, I know I personally read that book and I loved it. As for your recently published book, The Intelligence of Intuition, it proposes the idea of intuition as an unconscious intelligence based on years of experience that evolved to deal with uncertain and dynamic situations where logic and big data algorithms are of little benefit. Would you like to share a little bit about the impact you hope this new book will have and why you chose to write it?
I'm impressed that you seem to have read so many of my books.
Oh no, this one I'm planning to read. I ordered it on Amazon.
You're only planning to read, yeah?
Yes.
Good. Planning is good, yeah? There needs also a second step coming. So The Intelligence of Intuition is a more scientific version of a book that I wrote earlier that was called Gut Feelings. And the Intelligence of Intuition shows the scientific analysis about how intuition works. And also, it deals with the prejudices against intuition, what I call the war against intuition. So the short story about the war against intuition is this. If you go back in history, before the Enlightenment, intuition was seen as the highest form of intelligence that angels had, who could see the truth without error immediately. And why? Because angels had no body, no senses that could deceive them. That was an earlier meaning of intuition. After the Enlightenment, it has changed. And intuition became associated with women, while deliberate reasoning became associated with men. And as a consequence, at a time where women had a second role in society, the people looked down at both intuition and females. And this is the birth of this idea of female intuition versus male reasoning. And so women were, and that was basically the first episode of the war against intuition. Interestingly, these polarities that one had. So women are intuitive, they are fast, they are associate, and they are not really trustworthy. And men are slow in thinking, but rational, and rule-bound and logical. And also they need to pay attention that the females don't do something wrong. This kind of dichotomy has re-emerged in this century in parts of behavioral economics. It's called System 1 versus System 2. System 1 has mainly the same properties as the idea of female intelligence had, and System 2 is the male counterpart. But it's cleaned from the two genders. But this old idea is coming back. And that's basically the second phase in the fight against intuition. Namely, now it's the mistrust is about the intuition of everyone, not just females or males. And quite many of my colleagues are occupied by trying to show that intuition is wrong. But most of the time they're studying undergraduates with problems they cannot have experience at. And of course, how can they get it wrong? How do they get it right if they have no training and can have no experience? So in contrast to that, my research group and I study the nature of intuitive decision-making. So again, it's decision-making that requires experts, or meaning people have some experience with some topic. You may have experience with interviewing people, and the people in the audience may have experience with sports. Something they have trained for some time. And so the question is, how does intuition work? When can we trust it, and when can we not trust it? Give you an example. Think about baseball. How does an outfielder catch a ball? Now, if you ask outfielders how they do it, studies show that they really can't say how they can do what they can do so well. So this is an intuitive behavior. Now we can work out how this works. And it turns out that the outfielders do not try to calculate the trajectory of the ball. So that would be too difficult to calculate. And the calculation is not really the problem, but the estimation. For a trajectory, you would have to estimate the initial angle, the initial speed, and many other variables. Good luck. The outfielders use a number of simple heuristics to do their job. And the simplest one is easy to explain. If the ball is already high up in the air, the gaze heuristic has 3 steps. First, fixate the ball with your eye. Second, start running. Third, adjust your running speed so that the angle of gaze always remains constant. And you can see, then you will be exactly where the ball will be. This is an interesting heuristic because it only relies on a single cue or reason, the angle of gaze, and ignores everything else, including all the variables in the equation of a trajectory. Nevertheless, it is more accurate and more robust and can actually be done. And it's also a heuristic that not only baseball outfielders use, but for instance, people who are sailing in order to avoid a collision with another boat. What do? They do not calculate the trajectories of both boats, but you fixate the other boat, and if the angle of gaze remains constant, you know there will be a collision. So the gaze heuristic is also taught to pilots. And if you remember the miracle of the Hudson River, where a flock of Canada geese collided with the plane, and the pilots had to make a decision whether they can land safely on the next airport or not. How did they make this decision? Not by calculating the trajectory of a sailing plane, but by simply and fast using the gaze heuristic. In that case, you fixate the tower of the next airport through the window, through the window, and if the tower goes up, then you know you are hitting the ground before. And that's what Skiles, the co-pilot of the plane, explained in more detail. So a heuristic can be used for a class of problems. All this, in this case, it's all about interception or avoiding interception. And the same technology has been used in rocket designs or air-to-air missiles. And that's an interesting case where a heuristic goes from the animal kingdom to baseball players into rocket design. What we need, more people who take heuristics seriously and study them, rather than looking down at them and blaming them for making all kind of errors.
Yeah, and you were talking about how intelligence in the past was, intuition in the past was regarded as a sign of intelligence. And then in your book, How to Stay Smart in a Smart World, you mentioned how throughout the years, either mechanical work such as math would be regarded as intelligent, and then it would go into eras of creativity would be regarded as intelligent. Do you think in the future, as we move forward with AI, and AI can either take over mechanical tasks or some creative tasks, will intuition be the main determiner of intelligence?
Yeah, I would always avoid to outplay intuition versus reason or deliberate, because as I said before, you need both. And the same thing is when we work with the help of AI systems, then there will always an interplay between human imagination, human intuition, and the calculated intelligence of AI. So when I say AI, I mean what we at the moment have, which are artificial neural networks. And that will probably no longer be the technique in maybe in the near future. And here we don't know what's coming, and we have to rely on the intuition of designers and programmers to find new ways to make AI smarter. What we see today compared to a deep neural network, human intelligence is very different. Human intelligence is causal. The deep neural networks are statistical machines that calculate correlations between pixels, if it's on recognition of pictures, or between words, if it's ChatGPT. And the humans have intuitions about social life, about physical objects, about a kind of intuitive psychology. None of that is natural for a deep neural network. And we have to try very hard to program something or enable it that is something gets something close. But here we have two very different kinds of intelligence. And that is also a prospect, because then two very different intelligences can get together and work together. So that also makes clear that there won't be a general artificial intelligence if it's defined as one that is like a human intelligence, but only smarter. Certainly, deep neural networks will not be able to deliver that, and it would need a breakthrough in programming to find something that comes closer to human intelligence.
Yeah, that's really interesting. To move on to another area that you talk about a lot, risk literacy. In your work, Risk Savvy, How to Make Good Decisions, you introduced the concept of risk literacy. Why is understanding and managing risks crucial in today's society?
It is, risk literacy is as important as literacy, so the ability to read and to write, in a modern technological world. Almost everything we deal with has certain kind of risks. And to put it in a different way, nothing is certain in this world except death and taxes, as Benjamin Franklin once said. And the first step is exactly that. In order to become a risk literate, we need to overcome the illusion of certainty and stop thinking that there would be things that are certain. The only things that are certain is those that we made ourselves, like math. But also it has its limits, as we know. And the second one is to compare risks. And for instance, I'll give you an example. Take an example from medicine. In Great Britain, there is the so-called pill scare, which we also have in other countries, but here it has been well studied. And so the most famous one is the following, where the authorities announce that the contraceptive pill of the new generation is...
You're talking about contraceptives now.
Yeah, could you just mute yourself? So the announcement was that the contraceptive pill of the new generation increases the risk of a thrombosis by 100%. What do you think that means? Now, many British women thought it means that it's almost certain. But in fact, the study had shown that the old version of the contraceptive pill. For every 14,000 women who took it, one got a thrombosis, and for the new version, it increased from 1 to 2. That's 100% more, or it is 1 out of 14,000 more, which is, yeah. The latter is an absolute risk that everyone can understand, an increase from 1 to 2 in every 14,000. The former is a relative risk and 100% more. Relative risk cause anxiety or undue hope, and while absolute risk make it clear. The consequence of the single pill scare was that in England and Wales, an estimated 13,000 more abortions than usually happened after this single announcement. That shows two things. Risk literacy is not very widespread in the West. We have no studies from the Eastern countries. It can be easily taught. For instance, the difference between a relative and an absolute risk increase can be easily taught. So here it is the 100% more, and there it is 1 in 14,000 more. And also the lack of risk literacy can have strong consequences, such as unnecessary abortions. The relative risks are exploited in healthcare by the pharmaceutical industry, by the ads, and many others who try to convince you that their pills are so effective. There have been Lipitor ads that Lipitor reduces the chance of heart attack by almost 50%. And many people believe that means, oh, out of 100 people, almost 50 are saved. And actually, it was a reduction from 2 in 100 to 1 in 100. So 50% is the same as 1 percentage point. These are examples that it would be necessary that risk literacy is taught in all schools, at the universities, and if it's about healthcare, in medical schools. It is not happening. We have tested medical students, and I've trained more than 1,000 physicians in risk literacy, and very few have ever gotten a training, and most of the doctors can be tricked by either using a relative reduction or an absolute one, or by similar types of representations of numbers. Risk literacy is important, and it's not just about numbers. It's also about learning our emotions and see how our emotions are steered from outside by others who want us to think something or to buy something. And becoming risk literate, or becoming more risk literate, is also becoming more independent from others and from being manipulated.
And as the director of the Harding Center for Risk Literacy, what do you think are the most important contributions that the center has made under your leadership?
Yeah, so we have trained thousands of doctors in risk literacy. We have influenced the politics that the information given to patients does not use misleading statistics and is actually true to the scientific evidence. And we have helped nurses. We have helped children to understand evidence and put them into a more empirical attitude rather than believing or mistrusting simply what they have been told. So I think we have done a number of contributions, including training journalists, and I'm writing together with a few colleagues every month a column about the misuse of statistics in the media. And so we are doing our best to contribute to mature citizens and help them to understand about the many forces and conflicts of interest that threaten their health and also their wealth.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think it's important that we all learn risk literacy, especially being college students. But to move away from that topic, you expressed concerns about over-reliance on big data in decision-making. What are the risks of depending too heavily on data-driven algorithms?
Yeah. Again, the question is not whether big data is good or bad. The question is, in what situations is big data useful and when is it misleading? And very generally, big data is useful in situations that are stable, where tomorrow is like today, when you want to make predictions. And big data is of little use when tomorrow is different, because big data is always from the past. So to give you an example, remember when the Google engineers tried to predict the flu. And so the flu is a virus that is highly unreliable and highly unpredictable. That's why we need new flu shots every year. Nevertheless, Google Flu Trends tried to predict the flu from big data. So the algorithm was, as usual, secret and analyzing millions of data points and millions of search queries. And then finally it came up with an algorithm that had some 45 key search terms. And the idea was in principle plausible, namely that you could infer from the search terms put into Google where the flu is particularly high. So it was also called a forecasting version that's called nowcasting. You want to know what's now going on. Okay. As you may know, it was closed down in 2015. And the interesting thing is the following. When the swine flu came, the algorithm under-predicted the flu. And why? Because the swine flu came out of the season. It came in the summer, and the big data algorithm had learned that the flu is high in the winter, low in the summer, high in the winter, low in the summer. And low in the summer, but swine flu hit in the summer. So, and it couldn't correct itself. So the Google engineers revised the algorithm. So imagine what would you do if you have developed a complex algorithm for a complex problem and it fails. Would you make it more complex, the algorithm, or would you make it simpler? Now the Google engineers went for the first option. They made it more complex. And the new algorithm had about 160 variables. From our research at the Max Planck Institute in Berlin, we know that in situations of uncertainty, not just complexity, uncertainty, if a complicated or complex algorithm fails, don't make it more complex, make it simpler. And we had developed the most simple algorithm you can think of, which is based on human psychology. I call this psychological AI. So what do humans do in situations of where which are volatile over time? Now humans forget, and they often use only the most recent information in order to predict. So we made the extreme version of an algorithm, which is you only take the most recent data about the distribution, the frequency of flu, exactly the frequency, the proportion of flu-related doctor visits, and take this as the prediction for what's this week happening. This is a one reason heuristic. And to make it short, we tested it over the entire 8 years or so that Google Flu Trends was running. And this simple psychological algorithm that only relied on a single data point was in every year better than big data and for all of the updates of the algorithm. So this is an illustration about less is more. In situation of uncertainty, you do better to make it simpler. If the flu virus would be a reliable, stable virus, then big data would help you. So that's an illustration about big data is excellent in situations that are stable, well-defined, but not necessarily under uncertainty.
And big data is becoming more increasingly popular to be used by companies and different organizations. Do you think that as this popularity grows and data is collected from different, just all different forms of data collection possible, is there a future for big data in decision making, or do you think the only future is to mimic human decision making?
No, the future is that people don't just think that more data is always better, but make a distinction between a problem that's stable, well-defined, and one that is not. Big data is always up from the past. And if the future is not like the past, then you won't succeed with that. So you need human thinking to judge when you should rely on big data and when not. And the companies, there are studies about the CEOs and the managers of companies, which have shown that over 90% of them have no training in statistics or in IT. And these are those who then buy these products, and often they buy the products because they feel they don't want to be behind the others, and they buy the products because the others have bought the products until they find out that it didn't work. And they have lost all this money, but it's not their money anyhow in a corporation. So much of this is psychologically what's going on. And I've worked with a number of companies and also seen that most of the managers have very little understanding where to use big data and where not to use it.
Thanks for that. And looking back on your career overall, which includes numerous awards and groundbreaking discoveries, is there a particular achievement or moment that stands out to you?
Oh.
Good question to ask you, of course, but...
That's a difficult question. I don't want to single anything out. Yeah? I think the best achievement is, if anything, are my own students and postdocs, and their courage in thinking in new ways. And also, since I always had an interdisciplinary group, which is a risk in a world that's still highly disciplinary, to dare think across the fields and also to dare to think something that's innovative rather than playing safe in order to get a professorship just by doing what everyone else does. So my advice to you, if you're a student, is if you're smart, dare, and don't look at metrics and citations and career. You will have your career anyhow. If you're mediocre, then look at metrics and don't dare.
Good advice. You kind of beat me to it, but I was going to also ask for specifically navigating AI in the career field. Obviously, it's going to be integrated into every single type of field, regardless of our majors in college. What advice would you give to us as we're navigating this and trying to decide what to study?
What to study? I can help you with that. Yeah? That you have to decide yourself. But how to study? Sorry. That is here, usually I would say, I've always looked at broadly, not just read what's in my field is. Go broadly, study related disciplines. And it's an effort, yeah? But it will pay. That's one thing. Find friends who are critical and critical with you. The best friends are those who tell you every time when you make a statement that's not really funded on evidence, give me the evidence. So the best friend is not someone who finds everything great. The best friend is a complementary, very respectful, good friends. And that is awesome. Have you thought about the other side? So if you can find this kind of friends, then you are in good shape.
Thank you. And so last question before I open it up to Q&A. As one of the top 100 global thought leaders, what do you believe is your most significant contribution to AI specifically?
This I don't really enjoy these questions. What is your most significant X, or what color do you live most? I think what I try to do is going from risk literacy in health, in wealth, and in other fields is to extend this to risk literacy in the digital world, to encourage people to think for themselves, not go with the last hype, but think and see whether there's actual evidence. And any new technology is typically a great thing, but it will not solve all problems. And to believe that AI will take over the world and solve all our problems, that's a technological phase and more a religion. And we always have had these religious attachments to technology. And here, what I try is to encourage people to think for themselves, to get smarter themselves, and use AI where it's useful. And also, if I may add here, the problem, it's often said AI is good or AI is bad. That's the wrong question. AI is not good, it's not bad. If there is anyone to worry about, it's the people behind the AI. That's the problem. So what does a Putin have in mind? A Xi, a Kim, yeah? Or even a Zuckerberg or a Elon Musk? What are they going to do? And they are not necessarily out to help us to build a world of friendship. No, they're out to go for their own directions. And we need to be wary about the people behind the AI and not the AI.
Yeah, thank you. And if anyone has any questions.
Hey, could I ask a question? Can you hear me?
Oh, 1 second. Yeah,
Yeah.
you can.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering, do you think that AI could pose a threat in the future?
Do I think that AI is a threat for the future?
Yeah, do you think it could like become dangerous or like used dangerously in the future?
It is not dangerous, but it can be used dangerously. Yeah, that's the problem. The AI is not a problem. It's like nuclear power is not a problem. It's the use of nuclear power, like in bombing. And I mean, everyone who is an AI developer should ask him or herself, do I want to develop AI-powered weapons that someone could misuse? And that's a matter of responsibility. So if you look at the movies about AI, where some AI destroys everything and so on, that's not what will happen. It's a distraction. It's a distraction on the real question. And the real culprits, if there will be some, are humans. Thank you for your question.
Yeah. Wait, sorry, I had one more question.
Yeah.
How do you think that as AI becomes more integrated into society, it'll change like the foundations of society and how we like work and our culture and how we function?
Yeah, that's a very good question. The AI changes us already, like every other technology before. But that's nothing new. AI is not simply an assistant system. It changes us. Give you a simple example. Think about self-driving cars. Elon Musk tells us every year that next year they will be around the corner. No, there are no self-driving cars. A self-driving car is a car that can drive independently of humans. That means no human backup, and everywhere under all conditions safely. That's called a level 5 car. What we now have are level 2 cars and some level 4 cars, which is a car that can drive without human backup, but not in all conditions. So the future of autonomous cars will be, in my opinion, in level 4, because level 5 is too difficult. There's too much uncertainty there. Level 4 requires then, in order to use that we adapt to this technology. And that means that we will have to redesign parts of cities or entire cities so that these level 4 cars can drive safely, which probably means to build fences or walls around the street so that pedestrians and cyclists cannot enter, and also to no longer allow humans to drive themselves in that areas. So that's an example of how we need to adapt if we want to get the best out of the AI here, autonomous cars.
Thank you. We had another question as well.
Hi, Mr. Gigerenzer. I'm behind the computer now, so I can be next to the mic. I am a master's student here for computer science, and I actually have a background in music and psychology. And you touched on this a little bit about multidisciplinary studies, but I was curious if you had kind of like a reflective perspective on how maybe there's an intersection in music or just the arts in general and psychology and your studies in AI, etc.
Yeah. There are a number of intersections. Give you just one example. What I call psychological AI is the technique to inform algorithms by what we know about the human mind. And I gave one example that we built recency or forgetting into algorithms. And that's a kind of approach you might be curious about. Certainly, most machine learning students are taught basically nothing about psychology. They're basically taught statistics. And here might be a potential that we overlook. There's a reason why human intelligence is a marvel, and there might be something to learn about and implement it into algorithms so that they can do better.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question, actually. I also spent some time working as a high school math teacher, and I have seen kind of firsthand my colleagues feel very strongly about AI in terms of thinking of it as a cheating assistant tool that they have to combat. And in a way, it feels like, for example, in English class, that the essay is going in an obsolete direction. And I'm curious, in your experience as an educator, what do you think maybe the nuance is in terms of how we can collaborate with AI and use it as an educational tool rather than advertise?
To teach math, AI can be helpful. For instance, it can show you curves. It can show you how variables depend on others. But I do not think it can replace a math teacher. One important thing is that children learn from humans. And children learn the best, the more enthusiastic a math teacher is about their own subjects. And this social part gets lost if we just would do math only by a program. Also, it's very important to, so AI can be used for teaching representations. So for instance, Bayes' rule, so the rule for revising probabilities, is very hard to understand if you teach it in probabilities, in conditional probabilities, but easy if you teach it in what we call natural frequencies. That's another tool for risk literacy, just like absolute risk are easier to understand as relative risk. So natural frequencies are easier to use for doing Bayesian inference than probabilities, conditional probabilities. This part could be easily implemented in a math studies here, statistics, and would be very helpful to teach representations. But at the end, you teach humans, and the humans need a model, and they need enthusiasm, and they also need to feel accepted. And that's what a teacher can do, and a good teacher will do, but the machine cannot replace this part.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I had a question. Should I also come up to the front?
I think you can just speak loudly.
Okay, so my question was, so do you think AI will reach the levels of human intuition anytime in the near future? And if so, what situations would it be best used in?
Okay. It was a bit hard to understand you. Could you repeat it?
Here, I'll come up to the front. Yeah, so my question was, do you think AI will reach the levels of human intuition anytime in the near future? And if so, what kind of situations would that be used in?
Yeah. So if a near future is the next 25 years, I don't see any possibility the AI system will match human intuition. Nobody knows what the future will bring in 50 or 100 years. I would not want to make any prediction about that. But since the current dominating AI is based on statistical correlations, that is a different AI that we have. And the question whether it can do when it can mimic humans' intuition in some specific field, I think it can mimic it in situations which are well-defined and stable, like games of chess and Go. Although the process is not the same as with humans. And the deep neural networks, they correlate, they need huge amounts of experience in order to learn playing chess much more than humans have. Or another thing, another example that may help you to understand the limits. So humans have built in certain capacities, and learning needs only a few instances. For instance, if a 2-year-old, if you show a 2-year-old a giraffe or a bear, then you may have to give the child 2 or 3 examples, but then it can distinguish animals from other animals, whatever lightning there is, if it's from the back or from behind, while a deep neural network, an artificial one, needs 10,000s of exemplars to learn. And that gives you an idea that the learning process, what's happening in the mind, is very different for humans compared to a correlational machine.
Thank you. And one more question I had is, do you think it's a threat that people may start losing skills, such as, say, driving when self-driving cars come around, when AI becomes more mainstream?
Yes, that's clear. Right. When pocket computers came around, most of us could no longer do calculation in their heads. And the moment you stop driving, you probably lose the abilities. And the question is, then can we lose abilities that we really don't need anymore? And I think we need to be aware that the goal cannot be that we lean back and totally rely on some kind of AI. That's basically what some top tech industry leaders tell us, namely, we should open Google, like Eric Schmidt told us once, open Google in the morning and ask Google, what should I do today or with the rest of my life? And that's the big danger, as you said, that we would lean back and no longer develop our competences and just become a consumer. The danger is not that AI gets smarter. The danger is that humans get dumber.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Well, thank you for coming in to speak with us today. Really excited to send this recording to everyone else in our club as well. And everything you shared was really insightful. Hopefully everyone here has been convinced to buy the new book. Yeah, just thanks for coming in. Yeah,
it was a pleasure. And thanks for listening.
Of course. It was an honor, yeah. Thank you, bye.